I just did a podcast with Knees Over Toes guy, Marcel, and Ben Clarefield. We're talking about range of motion. And so the discussion was, is range of motion important? Why is range of motion important? And we broke it down. And what came out of it for me were three key things that range of motion gives us. One is longevity, youth. And so the understanding that long range or stretching the joint, stretching the muscle, stretching the tendon is the key to youth. That is actually ancient wisdom, and it really dawned on me of, yoga has that, martial arts have that, things that have been around for centuries, millennia. They rely on extreme enlarged range of motion. Children have an enlarged range of motion. Animals, when they wake up, they stretch. When my dog wakes up, it stretches. When a leopard wakes up, it stretches. And so maintaining a large range of motion is really clear that it's important for longevity. We now know that it's important for tendon health. It's the best way to remodel the tendons is to load them in their lengthened position, but we have to understand tension sequencing, because if it's already damaged, then that isn't the best solution. That's why the research is confused, is because if you have someone with a damaged tendon and you perform long-range strength training with them, then you're going to make the issue worse, and the study's going to show that it doesn't help. But if you can sequence the movement, if you can go from short range to long range, then you can have the miracles that have been worked with the ATG system. So we need to be able to understand that lengthening the tendon under load is the way to make it better when it comes to plyometrics. When it comes to actually hitting the ground hard, we want to have done that long range work first, okay? So we need to get it full strength into the tendon, full strength into the muscle tissue, remodel. That's youthfulness, longevity. That is our part one, right? The second thing is a bit more esoteric, but it's also really true and really important, is that it's kind of joyful. That is the reason why yoga has spread so much. Some might say that there's other components to it of kind of chilling out and maybe the different diet and things like that. There's a component to yoga that might lower your testosterone, but there's a component to it that was good for warriors in the past. The warriors that had to fight, that had to chop wood and carry water and also do yoga. In that complete holistic system, yoga has its place. And obviously within the temples, within martial arts, the Kung Fu master, he had to be able to get his leg up high. That was part of the system. They dedicated their whole lives to mastery of their bodies, and they wanted those positions. And there's something inherently joyful about being able to execute a position, whether fast or slow. In its simplest form, for you to understand this, think of if you're able to sit in the bottom of a squat, like a relaxed bottom position of a squat, think about how good that feels. Think about how good it feels to be able to touch your toes. But I can still remember back to when I couldn't sit in the bottom of the squat and when I couldn't reach down and touch my toes or put my palms on the floor. It just doesn't feel as good. There's something inherently joyful about being able to put your body into positions and to extend length. Now, in isolation, if we're only training for length, I wouldn't advise that. It's boring. It's not useful. It just doesn't make sense to be a professional stretcher. But if you're actually strong and you're adding that at the same time, then it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing, and we should be doing it. If you haven't experienced it, then you can't really comment. But if you have experienced it, then you probably know what I'm talking about. You're probably identifying with this and saying, well, yeah, that's it. 3 is options. You can't use a position that you can't get to. So I like training skills. I like kicking things. If my hips are more mobile, then I can kick a ball that's up higher. As a soccer player, if your hips are more mobile, then you can execute a kick and you can get to a ball that another person can't get to. If you have very tight hips, then you can't run with a larger range of motion at the hip. And therefore, you've got to run slower. If you slide and slip and fall and you are able to do the splits, then you don't get damaged when you do the splits. You see it happen in tennis when Novak Djokovic throws a full side split. He can access that position, therefore there's no injury. Sometimes it allows him to get to a ball that he might not otherwise get to. Other times it might be a slip. Okay, so we have these options. The Kung Fu Master has the option of kicking above the head. Djokovic has the option of full splits. We want options. You can't be strong in a position that you can't get to. If you can't get your hands back far enough to press behind the neck, then you don't have that option. It's better to have the option. It's better to have the option of being able to do a snatch because your shoulders are able to handle that position. We want options, and full range training, particularly when we focus on the long range, gives us those options. Now, the reason why I prefer to talk about full range, mid-range, long range, mid-range, and short range rather than full range is because we can be doing spider curls through a full range of motion, and the emphasis is actually on the shortened position, and therefore it's nothing like the long range stimulus of incline curls. Even when we're talking about full squatting, the stimulus that we get from full squatting is very different and less long range than if we do deep knee bends or hack squats, and less long range than if we do kneeling squats. They are a longer range movement, and because the sticking point comes much earlier. Even still for me, I'm much better at squatting like a normal back squat than I am a hack squat. Okay, my hack squat is still very weak compared to my back squat. And so that long range position, the longer range position is still not very strong. And that shows up with the natural knee extension. I can't do the natural knee extensions that a lot of people can do. And maybe I'd like to think it's something to do with having a little bit more chest and shoulders relative to my lower body and relative to maybe some of the people that are able to execute those movements. But really, it's not a good excuse. There are guys who are bigger than me in the upper body and probably have longer torsos, and they can still get those natural knee extensions. But it's really important for me to understand that long range is when it's really difficult. The hardest part of the movement is when the muscle's stretched. If we can understand that, then we have something really valuable. The way that it works with ATG is it's actually not really strength training that we're thinking about. Yes, we are making things stronger, but that's not even really the point. The point is to restore the youthfulness. The point is to make the muscle, the tendon, the joint healthy. If they're healthy, then we can go and do specific strength training exercises that are like peaking exercises that focus on the mid-range. You might know a few strength coaches who focus on that mid-range. That has its value on top of really healthy tissues. Coaches who focus on the mid-range, they tend to get other therapists in or find other solutions to solve the problem of tendon health, of joint health, of muscle health. If we have this foundation of very strong tendons and very strong muscles, the muscle is also going to become more tendinous through the process. This is something I probably haven't shared as a concept, but the muscle needs to become more tendinous, which means it needs to have more collagen. It is going to have more connective tissue and more tendon-like function in the muscle if we keep stretching it and exposing it to extreme tension. Now, I would say you would also get that from something like parkour. Okay, so parkour, they're not thinking short, middle, long. They're mostly using kind of that short range power. They would also have tendinous muscles. They would have more connective tissue in their muscles because of the kind of training that they're doing. Parkour training is a great way to become extremely athletic until such time as that it's not, until you aggravate a tendon, until you cause yourself an injury. And then many parkour athletes and dunkers have rehabilitated themselves with using this long range training. Okay, so this is a good way to look at strength training. Strength training is being able to lift the heaviest weights, be a powerlifter, be a weightlifter, be a calisthenics weight training expert, etc. That's not what ATG is doing. We can call it strength training, but what we're actually really doing is preparing the tissues for whatever you want to do, whether that's parkour, whether that's tennis, whether that's powerlifting, whether that's weightlifting. yeah, we want to be strong, and yes, we do progress the tension within this system, but it's not operating under the same value system. It's not primarily about how much weight you can actually put on the bar. It's about being able to progress to being able to handle those long range positions. That's primarily what it is. There's some specific exercises for short range and mid range for the squats, because dunking has been a key goal of Ben Patrick. But for the most part in the ATG system, it's really about tissue health. And so if we then want to go and become an arm wrestler, ATG is terrible. ATG is only going to help you to have a healthy shoulder, healthy forearm. If you can apply the principles of long and short range, then maybe you can have a healthy shoulder and healthy forearm for longer. Maybe you have to actually become dysfunctional at the elbow. I don't know enough about arm wrestling, but it's a good specific example of a strength sport where you're obviously not going to get to elite level with ATG training. You need to train very, very specifically. If you look at the training of Devin Larratt, he's set up his stuff to be the most specific kind of strength training. He's working against a pulley, and he's training very, very specifically for his sport. And he was able to compete against much bigger, younger arm wrestlers and do very well because he was able to use very, very specific training. And so it's very important to understand that when we're talking about long range and when we're looking at the ATG system, our primary objective is to set us up to go and do whatever it is that we want. So if we want to train calisthenics, if we want to train parkour, if we want to train for soccer or American football, it's the foundation that's going to let us go full on at that thing. And it turns out that if you can go full on at dunking, at parkour, at tennis, and nothing is holding you back, then you're going to go higher and you're going to go further and you're going to go to another level. Now, it's not completely true what I'm saying. Like, it is still strength training and you can get really strong in these movements, but there's better ways to build that peak strength for athleticism. And we should progress to higher tension variations. You will get that tension through the parkour, through the tennis in very specific ways. But understanding that we have this universal language, this underpinning now for tendon, ligament, joint, muscle, adaptation, that's what really excites me about what we've done, what has been built with ATG. Ben has that knee sequence. When I saw that knee sequence, I was like, this is a sequence of tension that is getting results that haven't been understood before. And I was at the time thinking quite a lot about strength curves and how it all fits together. And then when I saw the way he'd done that with knees, I was like, this is it. I wonder if this works with hamstring tendons. It does. I wonder if this works with tricep tendons. It does. I wonder if this works with bicep tendons. It does. I wonder if it works with Achilles tendons. It has for me. So to me, this is the master key, or at least a master key that everybody should understand in the strength world. Every athlete needs to understand this. The athletic elite must understand this concept. We need to go further with exploring it for all the other joints, and I want you to come with me on that journey. If you've got a question about a specific joint, or if you've got a question about one of these concepts that's come up here, please feel free to ask, and I look forward to continuing this discussion and making this a mainstream discussion in the strength world rather than just a fringe thing that only a few hundred coaches actually know about and most athletes still haven't understood or experienced, or they're just doing a few of the movements in ATG, but they actually have no idea how it works or how they could use it for other joints. Let's make that change. Let's get this knowledge out to everybody. Thank you.